Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the DS Show. I am joined by a good mate of mine from across the pond from the UK. Please welcome my good friend Calvin Magondo, product manager at Anaplan. Welcome to the show, Calvin.
Hi, Daanish. Really pleased to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on. I know we've spoken a few times over the past few months, and we actually got to spend some time. Um, no, I mean, I think it was about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, at an Anaplan Connect event in California, and it was great catching up there and getting to meet you. And we've got some good mutual friends in the space. So it's great to connect. And recently you talked and got to know each other a little bit more, and I've gotten to learn more about what you do. But for those that don't know you, would you like to please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm Calvin Magondo, product manager at Anaplan. I've been at Anaplan for just over 2 years now. Been a product manager, I think, about 4 years, coming on to 5 years now. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about your time before Anaplan? Just generally, what were you working on before you got to Anaplan, and what some of the experiences and roles that you kind of were playing around with before you had got to Anaplan?
Yeah, 100%. I'll start with university. I think that's kind of where the product management trajectory sort of started. So
Mm,
I studied at University of Essex. I did an economics degree, and then I went on to do a master's. But what I was doing in uni really kind of led me to product management. So I did a lot of social entrepreneurship. So I actually had an opportunity to create my own social enterprise where we're
mm,
helping teachers in Zimbabwe teach kids with learning difficulties. So that really kind of started this entrepreneurial spirit in me. And so after uni, I got a job at a company called RELX, RELX, in their data analytics
mm,
company. So I was a product manager there for about a year and a half. I did two rotations. The first one was at a smaller company within that company called ProAgrica, which was in the agricultural field. And then
mm.
I rotated over to another company called Sirium, and they worked in the aviation and kind of aerospace
Wow.
industry. And then from there, moved on to Anaplan.
So that's quite fascinating. Like very different industries: agriculture, education, and aviation.
Right,
What uh,
exactly.
what do you think of like each of your time in each of those? Like, was there things that, like, you found to be transferable? Like, how did you kinda navigate those industry shifts, as you're kinda navigating your career?
Yeah, so I think starting with what I did at uni with the kind of education project, I've always been passionate about education, especially for providing good education to the underprivileged. So that was
Mm,
a really great experience and really motivating for me. But I think what was the same when I was leading that project and going into project management at Relics was that the focus had to be on the end user, the consumer. And obviously in this case,
mm,
there were the beneficiaries, the kids and the teachers in Zimbabwe. So trying to translate that into going into product management in product, I was thinking, I need to make sure that the end user is satisfied just as I was trying to make sure that the teachers and the children were satisfied. So I
mm.
think that's the transferable bit, just being really end user focused.
Yeah, yeah. Now talk about how did you come across Anaplan? Like, what was your first impression, and what kind of made you attracted to join into the space?
Yeah, so I didn't know much about planning at all. So I was, sort of approached with the opportunity to work at Anaplan, and when I started to research it, I realized how big this planning space was, but also how important planning is to every single business, right? Because I
Mm,
was so used to kind of focusing on a specific sector, like agriculture, Pragica, and
yeah,
aviation with Cirium. I think Anaplan was the first company I saw, and I thought, wow, this product can be used by every single company, and that really interested in me because I knew I'd have the opportunity to work in multiple different industries, speaking with customers across multiple different just vectors. That's probably the most exciting bit about it.
yeah. Now, what year did you start with Anaplan?
What year did I start? So 2 years ago, 2023 January.
Great, okay, and when you come in, you're coming in as a product manager. What does your onboarding look like? Like, how do you kind of get into the space? 'Cause you entered at a very interesting time as Anaplan's kind of starting this upward trend.
Yeah, I completely agree. And everyone was telling me you came at a really good time. So I was like, thank God for that.
Yeah, yeah,
But the first thing was I had to learn Anaplan. I had to do my model building level one, level two, so I could understand what I was doing. But you're completely right. It was a really exciting time. I think that the energy was really great. Everyone was excited about kind of the new structure of the business, and everyone knew that we are going to have a lot, a much more clearer strategy. So that helped me a lot because I think as a product manager, what you really need is a clear strategy, and it kind of gives you that springboard to then be able to, do your job better. So that was really exciting.
Nice. How much of your role would you say is like customer facing, internal, working with partners? Like, if you were to kind of like split your day, like maybe percentage wise, like how much are you interacting with customers versus everyone else, internal or external?
It's about even all the way through, to be honest. I'm really lucky where in my role I get to be really hands-on in terms of the day-to-day things of product management, like sprint
Mm,
management and planning. But I also get to be really high level as well in terms of roadmap planning, speaking to customers or the
mm,
strategy, the higher leadership team as well. I try to speak to customers as much as I can, at least once a week, more if I can.
mm.
And the good thing is I actually really enjoy it. We've got really good customer relationships, so it's
Yeah.
exciting for me.
Yeah. Is there anything like what is kind of your approach when you are speaking with customers? I assume some customers have had Anaplan for a while, some may be new customers, some are kind of in between there. So how do you kind of navigate those conversations?
I think the biggest thing is not to make any assumptions because you
Mhm,
could speak to a customer that's known Anaplan for 12 years or 10 years or whatever since the start, and they wouldn't know about some really like management reporting or something. And then you
mm,
could speak to a customer that's been with Anaplan just for a year and they're almost experts. They know all the new features, they know what's going on. So I
yeah,
just come in there with no expectations, kind of let them drive the conversation, and I get an understanding of where they are in their kind of Anaplan journey, and then
mhm,
that kind of helps me as well.
yeah. Is that something you've noticed? Like, do you think newer customers are kind of more inclined to grasp onto some of the newer features that have come out?
I think they're just more excited. I think because obviously they've known Anaplan for what it is now, which is kind of fast moving, innovative. So I think
Mm,
they're very excited to, try the new features, ask questions. And there's a lot of excitement, I think, with the newer customers, which I find really helpful and encouraging.
yeah, it's quite fascinating. And as we kind of pivot now, taking a look at your role, product management in general, your role within the UX side of things, kind of take us through like where do you start? Right? Like when you come in, where do you even start? Where do you begin? And like how do you kind of set forth what you want to do? And like when you came in, like where was that starting point?
Yeah, so like I said, when I came in, I was very lucky because there was a very clear strategy that came from leadership. So I started from there. I was like, what's the strategy coming from leadership? And really broke it down after that. And because I got to speak with customers quite a lot early on, it helped me understand the sentiment. It helped me understand what customers wanted, what they loved about the platform, what they wanted more from it. And
Mm,
so, if I tie in kind of the wider leadership from the leadership team, the wider strategy from the leadership team, and then what the customers want, and then tying that into like a really compelling roadmap. That was essentially my first sort of 3 to 6 months at Anaplan. But like I said, it made it really easy when the strategy is clear because I've been at places before where the strategy wasn't clear and you kind of don't know where to go.
mm,
And sometimes having too much freedom is a bad thing. So it's good
yeah.
to kind of have like a narrow road to play around with. And that's what I had. And I said, it coupled on with the fact that I think Anaplan's unique where our customers are really engaged and interactive.
Mm,
They're really open to give feedback. They're not shy at all. So that helps me understand, what do customers want now? What do they need next year and the year after that? And then trying to tie all that into a roadmap. That was really what I've been trying to do.
nice. Now, I've always, even in conversations I've had with people around the network or former colleagues or partners or customers, I've always complimented the UX team because I used to work at Anaplan, and I just remember even when I used to work internally, anytime I would submit feedback, it would be like incorporated, pretty rapidly, and there's always kind of that laser focus attention given. One thing I also noticed about the UX team was you guys are very quick, just to respond to feedback and prioritizing what's important. So just a compliment to you and your team, of course.
No, I
Um,
really appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah, 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 and you guys are always kind of willing to jump on and, just I don't know what it is about your team in particular, but just always willing to incorporate feedback and willing to listen, so I've just always noticed that.
No, I appreciate that. And I completely agree. It's something I found as well. I can't take all the credit. I think our engineers deserve a lot of credit. They work really fast and efficiently. So it's great. And also, credit to the product management team. I know a few of us here in the UX, but
Mm,
again, we're really passionate about the product and it shows. It shows with things like how keen we are to get feedback, action it on. And yeah, I have to say I'm really lucky to be a part of this kind of organization.
nice. Now, in terms of how your role is positioned among some of the other teams at Anaplan, obviously there's a focus now on applications coming out. So where does kind of your role fit or situate with maybe like the finance app team or the sales app team? Like, are you kind of in that discussion, those discussions that are going on? Like, do you collaborate with those teams? What does that sort of look like? And where does the UX fit, like in the apps world?
Right. Yeah. So I think when the app strategy really kind of came to light, it was exciting for us in UX because, the UX touches everything, right? It's the
Mhm.
kind of the last barriers where the end users interact with. So, we have to work really closely with the applications team. And we know that they're, essentially one of our customers as well, right?
Mm.
So it just made me, feel a lot more appreciated as well because the application's really high on our strategy. So it means that UX is really high on our strategy as well. So yeah, we work really closely with the applications team.
Gotcha. Now, is there any differences you've noticed when working with, let's say, finance or sales or supply chain, like in terms of what they're looking for when it comes to UX? That could either be externally as customers or even internally.
Yeah, I think there definitely will be differences, but I think the main thing is really end user empowerment. Giving end users the power to kind of analyze themselves and perform their kind of planning needs, ad hoc analysis, and that's been kind of my goal and strategy from the start. Is really that end user empowerment.
Yeah, yeah. And now, like, if we kind of look back a little bit at, you've been in this role coming up on 2 years, and is there one feature or something that you look back at that you're most proud of that you or your team has kind of delivered up until now?
There's a few. It's always the smaller ones. It's not always the big ones that everyone's kind of been asking for. I think it's the small ones. I think one that comes to mind is we made some enhancements to the way that we do conditional formatting.
Yep. Yep.
And that was one of the features where we were tracking really closely the usage rate. And we
Mm.
just saw kind of this new conditional format that we introduced kind of skip to the top in terms of how many users were using it. And that made me feel really validated in terms of, all the planning that I did in terms of how do we, what do we prioritize? Because it's always a good sign when our users are using something you produce. But also it was a small enhancement, but it made such a big difference to how end users were interacting with the platform, kind of the planning use cases, and the feedback we got was really great. And I was really encouraged by the way that the engineers were happy with it as well, because they, got to hear that feedback and think, okay, we're building something that customers really love. So it's always the small ones.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember when that came out and I was like, "Ooh, you can change the color," or, "Oh,
Right.
you can, like, just do this so much faster now," right? And it's such a little thing with such a big improvement in quality of life.
For sure. And I think that was a good lesson for me as well. Like, it's not always the kind of extravagant features. You
Mm,
have to really focus on what is the biggest pain point for customers. And I think if I didn't have that precision, or if the product team didn't have that precision, we wouldn't have, gone to that point, or we may have, delayed these things. So I think
mhm.
it's just really being focused on what the end user really wants.
Yeah, I know, like, at least the consulting world, there's a bit of a consultant's dilemma where sometimes you're interacting with a customer, and they will tell you what they want, or at least what they think they want. Right, and sometimes we have to kind of have the skill or ability to navigate like, "Okay, this is what you asked for, but is it truly what you
Right.
need or want?" Right? So how much of that do you think applies to your role and when you're
A
working?
whole lot, a whole lot. And I think the solution to that is always ask, what's your problem, rather than what do you think will fix it? Because
Yeah,
I think they, and of course customers know what they want, but I think it's actually is my job to understand what's the best solution to their problems. It shouldn't be up to the customers
mhm,
to figure that out. So I think it always starts with asking them, what issue you're dealing with, what's your pain point, and then it's up to me to kind of ideate that, and then the team to ideate and figure out what's the best solution to solve that, rather than just going in and saying, tell me all the features that you want.
right.
It's never going to be productive in that way, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and I know, like, thinking about some other features that I recently played with, like the new drag and drop in the organization of apps and categories, the way you can kind of quickly maneuver things around and, like, you can kind of come up with naming conventions that you can kind of easily organize, and I think just lately I've noticed there's this kind of more of an emphasis on organization, cleaning up, the way a team might interact with the interface, easy navigation. How much of that do you think plays a role in, just kind of quality of life improvements? Because these are things which are more, I would say, maybe not the glittery, glamorous things, right? But just it's not necessarily UX directly, but it's just kind of the interaction and user experience of like, the navigating the system with the.
Right, yeah, but you know what? It's so important to adoption. Because I
Mhm,
think one thing is, some of our customers, they're so used to whatever, platform they're using before, whether it was Excel, right? Or
mhm,
if it was like a bespoke web application that they created, right?
mhm,
And if they're used to a certain way of doing things, even small, minute things that they want, that they're not able to do, that they were able to do before become such a big problem for them.
mhm.
And so it can affect adoption if, we don't pay attention to those things. So I think that's something that we're really trying to do, is pay attention to those small details, because we understand it affects adoption. And it may seem small, right? Maybe
Yep.
like, oh, just a little, issue with a usability issue, right? But really that could increase adoption by, 20%, 30%,
Mhm.
because all of these users were used to having, these features in a previous tool, or, whatever it may be. So it's, yeah, they're important.
Nice. And kind of when looking at the roadmap, I know like at least from our end from a consultant, right, when we're working with the end customer, there's kind of different personas that we work with. Like kind of like the analyst level, you've kind of got like a manager, you got a director, VP level, and you've got
Right.
like more of the senior executive level. So from a UX standpoint, do you guys kind of look at that or those personas when you're kind of ideating or coming up with the roadmap, like, or is there a kind of a different approach you guys take with like here's kind of who we're targeting or building this for?
Yeah, we definitely pay attention to personas. I think because if we don't, we end up building features for people that don't exist. So we've got, kind of high level personas. You mentioned a few analysts, exec, and it's a good actually base point sometimes as well to start off with, and
Mm,
think, what are some of the pain points that they may have, and then you try to validate that with real customer feedback. So sometimes I would start with that,
mm,
or you can start with, the customer, and then kind of go back to the personas and understand how wide this issue may be and how many people it may be affecting. But I think they just help you keep focus and build features for people that actually exist.
right, right, and it just reminds you of like one of our customers we're working with. We've kind of have like I'd say more of like the analyst or manager role. That's kind of more the preparer or reviewer. When you're kind of thinking about workflow or UX,
Right.
and then you've got like the executive that I'm thinking of. Like he really just wants to be able to go on his phone and hit approve or
Exactly.
look at it and look at it that way. How much of kind of mobile is part of, the world that you're part of?
Oh, it's big. So my area is mainly around the UX, but predominantly around grids.
Okay.
So, a big focus of mine at the moment is trying to improve end user empowerment, specifically when it comes to ad hoc analysis. So,
Mm,
how can we make sure that end users can come in, customize the data that they to view in the way that they want to see it, slice and dice in the way that they want to do it, um, without having kind of a long process to create, custom views, whatever they want to do. And a big part of that as well is the mobile experience as well, right? Because when we go
mm,
to, some of the personas around, the exec, like you said, they don't have as much time as an analyst or a planner to come into the, desktop web app and to,
mhm.
to do other things. So how can we speed up that process for somebody who's on the mobile and just wants a quick insight?
Yep.
And I think also that's where, Anaplan intelligence comes in as well. This
Mhm.
concept of, you don't actually have to do something, you're saying something, or you're typing a question, and then you're getting some insight straight away, and that ties heavily into it. So I'm also trying to look at that as well, and how can we leverage that to, again, empower end users, but get quicker to those insights as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now, looking at the roadmap, we've kind of talked about, your journey, your career, how you've gotten to this point, what you've been working on. You shared some things you're excited about or that you're excited about, it's already been released. Is there anything you can share about, something that's in the works? Maybe it's a roadmap thing or something that you're currently doing, whatever you're comfortable sharing with that, of course.
Yeah, sure. So one thing I'm really excited about is the combined grids enhancement. So I think that's really going to transform a lot of the ways that people build pages and interact with grids specifically. So we've had some really good feedback around it. Essentially, just allows you to create a lot more custom views and create multi-module views in UX is a big deal for a lot of our customers.
Mhm,
And we've seen customers use it and save space on a UX page. We've seen customers completely change how they you know design some of their modules, and
mhm.
it's been, like I said, it's still early, but I think it's been great feedback so far, and we're really excited to have everyone use that soon.
Yeah, and I can probably share, like, I think, Calvin, you and I spoke, and you gave me a nice early preview of it, and along with a customer of ours, and, it's something that, I think we can clearly see the benefit and the value, and it seems like you guys have really put the customer first and kept them in mind as you were rolling that feature out, so it's something, like, I don't think a customer would have even known to ask for, but again, like
Right.
what you said earlier, like, keeping the customer problems in mind, it really seems like that was at the forefront.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Right, so I kinda wanna pivot a little bit now. So we've gone a little bit into the roadmap, more technical stuff, but, just focusing back on you, Calvin, and your role, if you think about those, maybe there's people out there that are looking to break into product management. What advice would you give to anyone looking to enter the space more generally?
Yeah, so I'll say, the first thing is you don't need to have any prior product management experience or anything like that, or even sometimes related experience. I
Mm,
think really work on your soft skills, how you good at managing stakeholders internally, externally, how good are you, leadership, communication, how good are you with organization as well, and timekeeping, time management. I think working on them soft skills is probably the most important thing, because I think with product management, there's so many different things you're doing on your day to day.
yeah,
Whether it's you're speaking with your engineers, trying to turn a solution into kind of a problem that they can work on, or you're speaking with customers, trying to understand what their pain points are, or you're speaking with leadership, trying to understand what the strategy is. You're doing so many different things and so many different skills.
mm,
There's not, one job I'd say equally translates to it, but there's definitely skills you learn from, different aspects of a job that you can leverage in product management. I think a really good, similar role is project management, right?
yeah,
Because you're doing a lot of the same things. I think the biggest difference is probably the time aspect, where there's a deadline and whatnot. And
mm,
product management is sort of open; it just continuously goes.
mm.
So I think try to find maybe roles that you're learning those soft skills, so maybe things like business analyst or project management, and then from there it'll be an easier transition into product management.
Yeah, I think that's quite important, and you don't hear that too often, right? Is the soft skills. Oftentimes, at least even in the consulting side, we've seen that there's resources that are very pure technical, and sometimes there's resources that are pure functional.
Right.
And I think at least in a world where there's a lot of kind of technical folks, having the soft skills can really set you apart and give you an edge as compared to your peers.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any particular soft skill that you would say has helped you the most?
I think patience.
Yeah,
I think patience when you're managing stakeholders, because people, as a product manager, what you'll get is a lot of different opinions from people.
mm,
You've got a different opinion from, your engineers, a different opinion from customers, whether that's internal or external, different opinion from kind of the wider leadership team, different opinion from the sales teams. So just having patience to deal with those different opinions, and then trying to find a way to to come with a solution that satisfies not necessarily each stakeholder, but really what the goals are of the company. Because when you do that, everyone understands. Everyone's like, oh, okay, this is going towards our wider strategy. I understand, right? The what you don't want to do is not explain your decision, because
mm,
if you don't explain your decision or don't link it to the wider strategy, you're going to get people complaining and saying, why didn't you do what I said, right? So I
mm.
think, yeah, just having patience when you're managing stakeholders, and also communication as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what part of communication would you say, uh, would you find to be valuable?
I think the listening bit, speaking is super easy. Like I think everyone's good at speaking, but I think listening carefully. We spoke a little bit about some of those features where even the customers may not even know that
Hmm.
that they needed that solution. But if you listen really carefully around what their pain point is, then you'll easily come up with what the solution can be. So I think listening really well is probably the most important part of communication, in my opinion. And
Yeah.
then because it will allow you to speak better.
Yeah, and as for someone who's probably, like you mentioned, you're interacting with sales, leadership, customers, engineers. I probably assume listening is probably one of your top, skills that's helped you navigate. And I think just generally speaking, because you interact with so many different people, like you might be one of the few people that does interact with each of those different departments in the unique way that you do, right? So it's almost like you're kind of hearing it from all sides that perhaps not anyone else may get that perspective. Right? So it's kind of your job to really parse and filter and vet and kind of screen and also just take into consideration all these different aspects.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I do think product manager is really the cross section between those things. And I always say, I think as a product manager, I need to have as least opinions as possible. It's
Mm,
really not about me. I have to let the data speak, and I think that's what makes a good product manager is you're letting data speak, not what you think.
mm.
You're getting data from all these different stakeholders, and you're turning that into the action rather than, oh, I think we should do this. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And in a way, like you coming in 2023, kind of getting ramped up, in a way that may have played to your benefit in some way, right? Because you're kind of, you don't know what you don't know and you kind of take it in for what it is as opposed
Exactly.
to having some kind of preconceived notion.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. We talked about listening, and I hope for the podcast listeners out there, I hope that they've gained some valuable insights and, a little bit of a taste into what your day is like, Calvin. And as we kind of wrap up here, is there anything you would wish to leave the audience with? It could be a piece of advice or just kind of a general take or anything you're excited about.
Yeah, I think if you are trying to get into product management, I would say try to start your own startup, right? Especially now with so many of these AI tools. I think it's called vibe coding now, where you can essentially just build an application just by speaking to some kind of program,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So I would highly recommend starting your own, small app or, small something. I actually did that myself a couple of years ago. I started my own app called
Mhm,
First Chance, and that actually has helped me in product management because a lot of the skills that you learn as a kind of early stage founder, you're applying it into product management, right?
mm.
So I think if you're struggling to kind of get into product management, I would, start something up yourself, and that will give you the skills I think to get into there.
All right. Well, certainly share the enthusiasm for the entrepreneurial spirit. I think that's definitely something anyone, out there that would like to get a taste of it. We both would highly encourage it. And it's great. I think from a product management standpoint, you can kind of get your hands on and get a feel for, get a little bit of a preview of what it might be like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Calvin, for your time. Appreciate you coming on, and it's been great chatting with you. Hope to bring you back on the show soon. Maybe you'll have some exciting updates to share next time.
For sure. Thank you, Dan. It's been such a pleasure. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheers.